Yo guys, welcome to a new series that I'm actually starting. It is going to be making your first 2D platformer game. So, I'm so before I did start this series, but since then I've actually lost the project. So I've decided I'm actually going to restart it and try and finish it this time without actually losing it. And yes, I'll guide you guys the whole way through it. I think it'll be a good starting point for all of you to be able to make your first game, and it'll be a simple 2D platformer, which is quite a large genre in general. I'll be using Unity for this and the language C#. So yeah, let's get right into it. Okay, so what I've already done is I've gone in and imported this simple 2D asset pack. Basically, it's got different sprites of your characters. You got some enemies. It's got an end goal, and what I'm going to do quickly is just put together a simple scene where we can start practicing and actually making a game. So now that I've got the whole scene set out, I realised I did add a couple bits to the player without actually explaining what they were. So the first thing I added was a box collider. So what this basically does is adds a box around the player and acts as a collider. It's exactly what it says it is. So when that interacts with this other collider that I've stuck on all the tiles for now, what will happen is when it loads, give it just a second, it will just stop in the air. Like, it's basically collided and stopped the player from falling any further. I've also added a rigid body to the player. Basically what this does is it controls majority of the movement of the actual object and also gives it gravity. So if you're making a top down, you'd set this gravity scale to 0, so then you can move all over the place without having the effects of gravity. But since we're making a 2D platformer, I'm going to leave it at 1. And yeah, you can change these values. For example, if you want to do like a space theme, you can set it to like 0.6 and sort of simulate the effects of a moon. But yeah, we'll leave it at 1 for now. So the next thing we want to do is add a controller. So we want to make a new script. Press create and add. And then once it all loads and stuff, we want to open up this script in Visual Studio. Cool. So here we are we're given 2 functions to start with. But the first thing we want to do is create a float variable called moveSpeed. So this is basically going to just be the speed that our player will move at. Okay, now in the what we're going to do in the update function, we are going to define a new float. Horizontal inputs. And this is basically going to be the inputs that we use. So for example, WASD are the typical PC controls. So what we're going to do is float horizontal input equals input.getAxisRaw, and then horizontal. And what this does is it gets the A and D keys and allows your player to move left and right and gets the input value of -1 and 1. -1 if it's A, so left, and 1 if it's D, so right. Difference between getAxis and getAxisRaw is that with getAxis, your player, when you let go of D, for example, your player will sort of drift to the right a little bit rather than stopping immediately, whereas with getAxisRaw, your player will stop immediately. So it's up to you as to which one you would want to use. It depends on the game style, but with this I'm going to use getAxis raw. Okay, the next thing that we want to define is our rigid body 2D, and we're going to label that as RB. And then in the start function, we're going to do RB equals get component of rigid body 2D. And that will basically just grab the rigid body from the player and automatically assign it to the script. Now, with this, what we want to do is rb.velocity equals new vector2 horizontal inputs times your move speed. And because we have no vertical velocity, we want to leave that at 0. Okay, once it all compiled, now we will see that in our controller script we now have our elements that we can edit. As I said, rigid body will be assigned automatically, but move speed we can set at 5. So now if we press play, play should fall down to the ground. So I did actually just encounter a small bug there. It was simply I just misspelled horizontal. It's something as simple as that can cause a little bit of confusion. But now that that's fixed, now if we press play, as we press A and D, we'll see our player will move left and right now. Okay, now that we have horizontal movement, the next thing we want to implement is vertical movement, so jumping. And to be honest, that is also very simple. So the way I personally prefer to do it is I like to add a tag and call it ground. Okay. Next thing we do is we go into here, add a public bool grounded, and in our update section, actually no, so we want to do void on collision enter 2D. I like to change this to other, and then if we do other.gameObject.tag, wrap this in an if statement as equals to ground. Then we can do grounded equals true. And then we have another function, is on collision exit 2D. And basically copy and paste it into the same thing, copy and paste in the same thing and change it to false. Okay, next thing we do is we want to actually implement jumping. So we'll add a comment, movement, horizontal movement, and then jumping. Okay, to implement jumping, we make an if statement, and then we want to do if grounded and basically if grounded equals true and then another bit input.get get button down, and then whatever the jump button is. Basically, if both those conditions are met, so for example, if the spacebar is met and the player is touching the ground, then we want to do rb.velocity equals a new vector2 rb.velocity.x, so the current speed that the player is going in left or right, and then we want to make a new float, so public float jumpForce. Okay, and then if we put jumpForce into here, that should theoretically make sure to add our tag on go down to our player, let's add a jump force of 10, let's say, and then press play. So you'll see our grounded has been set to true, and when we jump, I do apologize. I did make another mistake actually. Just in this section, before it was 0, what we need to set that to is rb.velocity.y to get the speed of the player's vertical movement. So yes, again, I do apologize about that. But yeah, just go back and change that. It shouldn't be too hard of a change. And now, if we come back into our game, everything should work smoothly. So you've got a movement and jumping. Every time he hits the ground, the ball is set to true. So that is actually all I'm going to cover today for this first episode. I do hope you guys enjoy, and tune in either tomorrow or the day after for the next video. I think I'll try and implement some animations for that one. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something, and yeah, I hope you guys are going to continue with game dev, and yeah, good luck.